distributor company. I'm also the co-founder of industriamusical.es. And today I'm here to talk about with these amazing people about new trends in musical digitalization. And basically the name of the panel is From the Hype to the Business. And we're going to cover live streaming, A&R, playlisting, what's the new trends from everything that is happening that could actually be useful for the business and not just a hype in itself. So I want each of you, if you can introduce yourself to the audience, and then we can start talking about it.
Sure. My name is Rolf. I'm founder of Mitivision, which is a music API which gathers information in real time from around the web, really good to analysis how more sound and provides different music services. I'm also launching a new music startup next week, which is in the live music space. It's a subscription service for live music. I'm on the board of the Portuguese music exports platform, Office, and I'm also working for Start Portugal, which is the platform that promotes entrepreneurship in Portugal. So not only in music, but also in tech.
Hi, I'm Anthony Karydis. I'm the managing director of Mativision. Mativision is a company that for the past 15 years have been producing immersive content from live concerts, shows all over the world. We've worked everywhere from India to Canada, from Argentina to Sweden. We've produced live streams in VR or 360 interactive videos for American Idol, from news, for MTV. We live stream MTV ZMAs for 4 years in a row now. So this is really where we have been active, and we have been following how the music industry develops around the new technologies and whether they are really eager or willing to adopt them or not.
Hola, buenos dias. And that's it. My name is Zach. I'm the media analyst over at Midia Research. We work at the crossroads of media and technology. We're how do I describe it? A data and analysis service focused specifically on the streaming economy and what that means for monetization across video and music.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start, just to start, I want to see if we're on the same page, and I just want to know if you agree with me that normally technology shapes how music is consumed and how it's being created, or is the other way around? Music shapes that technology?
I think it works both ways. Whenever there's a technology breakthrough, it obviously makes the industry shift, whether it's in competition or playing or consumption. And it's actually very useful at first when there's a new technology breakthrough. The grassroots can take advantage of that. When Napster came, there was a lot of new bands being discovered because everybody was assuming it was there. When Spotify came in, you could, any of us could create a playlist that could become get traction and give recognition to some of the bands we were picking. The problem that I have with the technology is that with time the industry balances it again. So Spotify, when it came in, allowed other brands of streaming to get indie bands to get known. But then when the big industry comes in again, starts to control the channels, it's basically going back to radio and to all the other, because it's again, like you need with a radio player, you now need a playlist player. So it balances.
That's my role, on a global scale, yeah.
So you need to talk to these guys if you want to get to the specific playlist.
Yeah, that's right. Sure, and do you have anything to add to this? Basically, what's the role of technology influence the music in itself?
Sure. I think it depends very much on what kind of music you're creating. Mm-hmm. So this is completely unscientific, but we've postulated over it, or theorized over at Media Research, that one of the reasons why hip-hop and dance music have been so successful, at least in the streaming era, is if you were not accepted early on by mainstream forms of media, so you weren't getting on television, you weren't getting on the radio, you had to build out your distribution, your own promotion, your own way of doing a live set. You built that completely outside of the mainstream channels. And so with streaming, these genres were far more accustomed to having to, make your own way, find this tool and then actually do something with it. And also the tool is shaping how that person creates, because now you're creating in a bedroom versus this, anachronistic, expensive studio. So I think, what was the question again?
No, yeah, I mean, basically...
more being shaped by technology rather than the other way around.
And in that sense, like, as you know, like, playlists right now is, like, first, how many people in the audience are artists? Yeah, 2. And how many works on labels? Wow, 2. So, then we're gonna move probably, you're more into live music, yeah? Most of you. So the first part, we're gonna start with playlisting, how that can affect the live experience as well. And going back to playlisting, I'm wondering if the playlist will change the way that creators are working in the studio. And now, like, you can actually get the analysis of a playlist, what's the DNA of the playlist on the sonic brand, if it's acousticness, if it's lightness. So basically, producers can now adapt their way to work to get into a playlist. So basically, is that going to be the future? Like, my goal is to get into the playlist, so I'm going to go to the studio with this goal in mind. And the second one in the same line is how it's going to be the future of the album now that we're in the playlist era.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, if they want to get into the place, they will adapt. I mean, you've seen that in the past. Again, going back to radio, people producing in a certain way so it can be played, get airplayed. So yeah, I think it's going to happen the same with playlists, and it's happening probably. I'm not sure if it's only playlists. I think I see bands doing not only thinking of that, but also, again, going back to what I said this morning, to YouTube, which is the biggest streaming player, also being very careful when they do the video, so the video is also cool and guarantees them airplay on the biggest streaming server, which is YouTube, and not Spotify. But I think that will happen because it's basically we were repeating the same thing in a different medium. So we adapt to radio to get airplay. We adapt now to get playlist play.
You also have, again, going back to the first question on considering how it shapes how people create. When people wanted to get on the radio, so before the invention of the radio, you kind of have the era of the symphony or the longer term, longer form creations. Whereas when radio came along and was starting to be really popular, particularly in the US, and it starts getting put in cars, artists began to realize, or rather the radio people who were controlling that channel said, unless you create a form that fits with drive time radio, or it has to be kind of a 3 minute song. Yeah. That's when you get the verse, chorus, verse format that's been so popular for so long. That's when you get the Beach Boys talking about riding in a car. That's when later on you have LL Cool J saying, I can't live without my radio, because you had to get on there. So playlisting will probably have a similar effect in how people create, because they'll say, if I want to get on Rap Caviar, I want to get on Baila Reggaeton, is that?
Yeah, Baila Reggaeton, Latino.
Yeah, you'll look at what works and perhaps be more inclined to create that way.
Yeah, if you have more data, so the time it takes for a user to skip track. If you see that skipping track around 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you won't create a song longer than that, because you know that might not work in the playlist.
Yeah, I mean, the first 6 seconds are super important, because the span of attention right now is so big that if you don't get a hook. Yeah, as you said, depending on the kind of music that you're working for and the genre. If you're working probably in a jazz track, maybe you will not be so worried that the first 6 seconds are, where you have the hook. But if you're going to the mainstream or the pop, you have to take care of that. But will that affect, this could be more like subjective point of view or more like romantic point of view, but I guess we all here are fans of music and we love music. Are you scared that it could becomes like a very genetic tracks that is not like the soul of the music is lost because we're working just to get into something because we have the data for it?
I don't think so. I mean, well, I hope not, because I mean, you always have a lot of different people creating music, right? You have ones that will be struggling and wanting to get there, to be more mainstream and get more plays, and you'll have the others that will want to keep will keep left field and do independent music, and you'll still have that. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think it will balance itself.
Can I make a point here which is a bit different to the main discussion we have, which is that we seem to be focusing a lot on playlists when we all know that the artists actually are not making a lot of money from the playlist, while they're making more money from live shows and tickets. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I don't know whether it's really of huge importance to talk too much about playlists when the artists are really making their living today from live shows.
But how many artists are through live shows without getting radio or playlisting first?
Yes, yeah.
That's a very big question, because that again brings a totally different kind of distribution, and we need to also distinguish between how technology affects one side of music, which is the production of music, which in many respects is really depending on technology, and the other side, which is how you distribute this, which has changed totally in the past 15 to 20 years. Yeah. So now, for example, an artist does not need to be accepted by any of the big labels in order to break into the market. They can do that by playing in clubs, by making their own people. And in some way, it's been unfortunate that the labels have been actually exploiting this in the way that in the past you would go with a small cassette, you would present 3 songs, and if the 3 songs would cut it, the labels would give you a contract on something, and you should start working on it. Today, the labels will not do that. They will expect you to go there with, I don't know, 100,000 followers on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, with a following in live shows from clubs. So I think there are totally different ways to look at it, and to focus and put too much, I would say, value or emphasis on the playlist itself. Yeah. Is really missing the point, because at the end of the day, very few people actually know what they're listening to when they're listening to playlists.
It's in the background, right?
Yes, because they don't even bother looking at who's playing. So you get playlists from Spotify that play similar songs to you, so you'll be listening for an hour to songs that all sound the same, but you probably will have not a clue who's the guy or the lady that has been playing.
Which will be your starting point for an artist that wants to be important in this new era of digitalization? What's the core to start a project right now, if it's not playlist, from your point of view?
I think it's creating what you want to create and focus on your art and what you have to say and how you want to present it. And it's becoming more and more important, I believe, what kind of experience the artists are giving out to their fans, be it 2 fans or 2 million fans. So I think going back to the artists and trying to persuade them that they have to really adapt to what the playlist would like them to do is very similar to what has been happening in the 50s, where everybody were coming out with exactly the same songs. But all of a sudden, the people that were different were the ones that make the difference, exactly. Like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the guys from the other side of the Atlantic. Yeah. So no matter whether you had 100 bands that were playing exactly the same music, the ones that played the different music were the ones that really cut through and made history. So even today, if we try to sound like all the others, and if you look at most of the lady singers or some of the male singers, they all sound the same. The songs are exactly the same. You wouldn't know whether it's, I don't know, Dua Lipa or whoever else. And my company, we live streamed in VR MTV's EMAs a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't believe that practically everybody sounded exactly the same. So, I mean, and then you get people like, I don't know, very, very few artists, like the Killers, for example. Yeah. I'm not, saying this to say that they are better or anything, but they just sound different. And all of a sudden, that particular act that sounds different is the one that really breaks through. Everybody else seems to be exactly the same, with the same rhythm, with the same voice being controlled and corrected to sound either correct or different. So what I would say is that it's still the same. Artists have to focus on their art, create what they feel they should give to the world, focus on it, and put all the power behind it and create an experience that people would like to watch and feel.
And get in front of the audience, whether it's playing live or
Okay.
even using Instagram or Facebook and all the social media to get in front of the audience. You know.
You want to no okay. You both are focused on live streaming. I was checking some stats from last year, Tomorrowland, and basically, you know, like they have 7 million subscribers on YouTube, but they reached 2 million unique users through the live streaming with 1.2 billion streamed, which is huge. It's amazing. Basically, they claim they are the biggest music event ever. And I've been like behind, like trying to see what's happening also with live streaming and how we can get that into the mainstream level. So basically the question is this only for these big events that it's available at this point, or we can expect that next year Monkey Week have a live streaming of this and could be like reaching millions of streams? I don't know.
My personal experience in isolated concerts didn't work really well with streaming. Probably because the bands weren't, attractive enough to create the crowd behind them. The only good results I've seen in live streaming are, as you said, in festivals and like Coachella and
Coachella went huge on 2012.
and Tomorrowland and probably it's not only because of the brand of the festival and all the push that's being made by the brands that are supporting the festival and all the media that's supporting the festival. So it has to be a lot of marketing effort to bring people to that channel to watch it. If you're doing it alone, not on a platform, it might be difficult to get there on your own for live streaming. I think.
Well, here I'll give you my experience of almost 10 years of live streaming in 360 degrees and interactive video, which is not the average live stream. And the experience is very interesting because when we live streamed, for example, Siguros from Dresden, that was in 2014, if I remember correctly. They played in an open theater with 5,000 people in the theater, and we got 120,000 people watching the live stream. And it was only promoted that same morning through Facebook.
Or paying?
Sorry?
For free or paying?
That's another very, very interesting point that I would like to make in this conversation maybe a bit later. The big difference between all the millions of people that you get in live streaming when it's free. We got 3.4 million people watching American Idol almost 8 years ago. The minute you put $1 behind the live stream, the 1 million drops to one person. And it's mainly because people have been used to consuming this kind of experiences for free. And one of the big questions at this particular moment in the industry, and this is a question that I would also like to pose to the audience when we finish, is what is the kind of experience that the audiences would be willing to consume by paying for this? Because the channels that have made a kind of a commodity, not only live streaming, but the consumption of music, like YouTube, where you can watch anything for free, and you can copy anything for free, and you can go in a concert with your mobile phone and stream to Facebook for free, so your friends can watch it for free. It's not the kind of experience that people are willing to actually give any value to, and pay the same way that in the old days my generation will pay for LPs and will really treat them as a sacred kind of material. So the big question is, now that we are going through a period that everything is easily accessible for free, what is the type of experience that the audience would expect that would be willing to pay for? In the same way that you are willing to pay for a cinema, for a film, you go to the cinema and pay for this.
Like, I'm amazed how I don't know, I live in Barcelona and we have a few cinemas where they put like live streaming from events and it's sold out.
Yeah.
Like I remember I went to see Les Miserables, the 25 years, I know it's Miserables, but it was nice. Like, I don't know, it was the 25 years of the Les Miserables and it was full, like sold out. Yeah. Everyone wants to experience there because I think it's the social part of being out. It's not me on my laptop computer. Maybe I can pay for that. So I don't know if live streaming is going to involve anything of social aspect of the
I think social interaction is a plus there, and it creates the bonding, and it's something you would pay for. Actually, the startup I'm launching next week uses a lot of that to hopefully attract the audience and make it pay for it, and get people in the room to. We're even doing preparing what we call advanced listening parties with some of the biggest indie labels, where you go 2 weeks before the record is launched. We get 100 people in the room in the city that love, I don't know, Sharon Van Etten, and we will listen for the first time. The record is coming out in 2 weeks, and you know, the artist will probably jump through Skype or something and ask the audience what happened. So creating this kind of exclusive and premium experiences that hopefully people will pay for. I don't know. Let's see.
And music is social. People always liked historically to experience music as a social event. I mean,
Well, now with headphones?
Well, that's totally different, because that's a very personal experience that you are used to it. But I mean, even today, you see festivals drawing huge crowds. So we remember that Woodstock got an awful lot of people there, but you get an awful lot of people in a lot of festivals. And in fact, it seems that statistically the festivals in the past 5 years are growing and are becoming more and more, and they're getting more crowds.
But what is a festival other than a live playlist? It's a direct extension of that. If people are more likely to listen to many artists rather than just the one, a festival is essentially a live form of the shift towards a playlist.
Yeah, but I also think that some people go there for the experience of getting together in the same space.
I don't agree that it has anything to do with the playlist. For one, you don't have artists playing one song. You don't have artists in a row that are 10 of them all exactly the same, even with the same haircut. So if you go to any of the festivals, you'll get one band that will play their own list, which is what they would want to put forward. So I would say that it's closer to album playing than the real playlist. I think the playlist is totally different to the experience of the festivals. The festivals is the closest we can get today to allowing individual artists to put their art out in the way they want it. And even if a festival says, well, we're going to be a heavy metal festival and we're going to have 10 heavy metal acts, it's still each act having a different set, and they put forward their own personality, their own creations. In many respects, I think they still control even what songs they play, what tunes they play. I think the playlist is a totally different beast, because the main focus of the playlist is to give you a continuity of similarity. So you're listening for an hour, and you think you have been listening to exactly the same song, even in the same key. I think that there are some algorithms that make sure that the songs don't even change in speed, and they have the same BPMs, and they have even the same kind of keys, so people are not woken up. I don't know what I think.
Going back to festivals, I don't know, like, I just want to opinion that I think that's part of the results of that big amount of acts that we can consume today, that it's not possible to attend to single shows. So it's the only way the audience can afford that is to go to a festival, and actually you experience 4 tracks of this, you go to the next one. People normally, they only listen to the whole show if there's a headliner. So I think that's a big challenge for the theater, is to be relevant, to make that people want to go and see your full show and skip the rest. So that's a big challenge, and I agree with you. That's not part of technology. That's part of how you are act like an artist, and how you are relevant, and how you are creative and different from the rest. It's like you in your panel before, you were talking about catalogs. And I'm wondering, do you think there's a second chance or second life to generate big chunks of money via VR, for example, for experience like, I don't know, the White Album from the Beatles?
Sure. So I should caveat, not for VR. I'm one of the most bearish people on the future of VR. I think, like, people don't want to wear something on their face.
Yeah.
Apple, they don't, for the most part, people don't want to have something, technology on their body. Apple are the only company that ever got us to put something on our body to actually carry around technology in terms of the iPhone. We don't don't want to have something on our face typically, so I'm really skeptical of the future of VR. But you were talking about the idea of catalog being revalued.
How the catalog?
Sure. On the festival circuit, that's a really important question, because if you look at the typical headliners for festivals, they are mostly acts that were built their entire following in the heyday of the CD or vinyl. Yeah. So they got to have this established audience that would follow them around Europe and go, pay the big money to go to these festivals. But with streaming, because it seems to cater, or at least just the internet in general, caters far more towards niches. The idea that you're going to have these all-conquering festival headliners seems to be problematic. Yeah. It's what happens when you don't have enough of these acts to keep that going anymore.
Yeah,
they're retiring soon, many of them.
Will Page, he did a research in the UK, and you're running out of headliners. In the last years, the only headliners, it was Florence the Machine, that it was because Dave Grohl have an accident.
Pulled out, yeah.
And a few others, maybe Mumford and Son, but like the age from the headliners went in the last year from 31 to 46 years old.
In 1 year?
No, in the last 10 years, I think.
It's 10 years.
And so it's like, okay, what's going to happen in the future if Dua Lipa and the rest doesn't get to the...
Well, they have Stormzy headlining Glastonbury now.
Yeah, we need Ed Sheeran and of course like...
Yeah. Well, the big question is for how long can they do that? Because if you look at, let's say, I don't know, Elton John is filling stadiums for the past 40, 50 years, whatever. Is Dua Lipa going to be doing that in 5 years from now? I mean, we see that most of this kind of... And I apologize for bringing Dua Lipa all the time in the conversation.
It was me this time. Like, it was me who put it here. Like.
But I think the longevity of the acts that we see in the past few years is not the same.
Of course.
And if we want to talk about VR or experiences that are away from actually being there, I think we're nowhere near presenting any kind of experience that the wider public will accept and will be willing to live with it. Yeah. It's not only the things that we put on our heads that everybody hates. I mean, we are mainly, today we have to be called that, a kind of VR production company. Okay. But we are not happy with the kind of delivery devices that we have in our disposal at the time. And we're nowhere near delivering an experience that people would like. And I think if we look back in the way that the live experiences have developed, we can draw some very interesting lessons. Like, for example, if we look at how BBC One was presenting acts in the beginning of the big heyday of the Beatles, they just put some people on a stage, they just went on their instruments, and that was it. And then all of a sudden you got some acts that made a lot of difference. Starting 3 or 4 acts really were the ones that were the monumental, I would say, revolutionary acts. And I'm not even going to talk about the Beatles with their video of Strawberry Fields Forever. But let's think about what the Queen did, which are also in the limelight now with a new film. They brought drama on stage. And then you got Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd were some people there, very, very small. Nobody really took any notice of them as people. But what happened above them, the light show, the projections, the full experience was totally different. So they drew the interest away from the actual human people that were there, not only to the music, but to the visuals. And then you got Peter Gabriel with Genesis, that brought theater into. Then you got Bowie, that changed everything and brought in different personalities and personages. So if we see all these differences that happened in live experiences, we expect to see this kind of sea changes in the experience that we deliver away from live. And if we don't manage to do that, the whole VR and AR and immersiveness is going to die out because people simply will not buy it. We're not talking about games. Games is a totally different area. Yeah. People like to play games isolated and connected with other people that may be on the other side of the Atlantic. But if you want to experience music in an immersive medium, you need to do it with your friends. My daughter has a very interesting saying. Every time I ask her to test something of what we do, she says, it's very lonely in VR, it's a huge saying. It's very lonely. And unless we make it less lonely, people will not really buy it in numbers. So the big question is, how do we move from what we're doing today when we recreate experiences away from the stage, which is really very, very simple, and it's what cinema has been doing in the first years. What did people do when they invented the first cinema cameras? They put 1 or 2 or 3 cameras in front of the theatrical stage and they filmed the theater in the same way that people would watch it. It was great because if you were in London, for example, you could, project on a wall a very strangely moving, I would say, cinema work that was a theatrical play from Paris. And that was great because you couldn't be in Paris. But then that's not cinema, because if we look at what cinema is today, and again, without making this, really not making a big fuss of it, think of films like Inception. I mean, I think most people know Inception. Or, I don't know, even Gravity, or Interstellar, and I'm choosing them for specific reasons.
Nolan.
Yeah, exactly. These are the kind of films that have nothing to do with putting a camera in front of a stage and filming an act in exactly the same way that it is being acted. So the big question here is, instead of watching the videos of performing on a stage, what would we really want to film if we want to make this an immersive experience away from the stage? And that's a very, very big question.
But we've had the technology for 3D cinema since the 50s.
But nobody bought it.
But nobody bought it.
Nobody bought it.
Exactly. So it's the idea of, even if we have had this opportunity to create those films, the traditional format still was preferred by audiences.
It's very simple. I mean, if you look at it from the technical side and psychologically, 3D in cinema didn't really add any new material, any new information to what we already have. There have been some stages in cinema, like, for example, going from black and white to color, from silent movies to spoken movies, and it's a very interesting. I was teaching at a university in 2005, and I was giving this as an example to students, and some of them were surprised. The big question is, when you went from black and white to color, did you actually gain anything? And the big answer is, no, you didn't. Because if you showed a London bus in black and white, it's more or less a red bus. And if it's not a red bus, who cares? It's almost a red bus. So you have the information somehow known to you that this is a black and white image, but the sea is going to be more or less blue, and the sky is going to be more or less blue, and the grass is going to be more or less green. So when you actually painted the grass green, you didn't really gain any new knowledge, unless you did something very far out, where you manipulated the film in order to use the color as a creative means. Then you actually put something into this. But the great majority of cinema didn't. They filmed grass as green, and the sea as blue, and the skies as blue, and the buses in London as red. So what did we gain? Really nothing, because we knew all that information. When cinema went from silent to spoken, we gained a lot, because we gained information we couldn't think about, we couldn't know. There were some subtitles, for example, that would say a couple of words, but you lost the drama. You didn't have all this way that the actors actually pronounce what the words are. And I think that was information that really added to the experience. 3D in the same way added absolutely nothing. Because, I mean, I look at this lady there and this gentleman here, and even if I close my eye, I know that this gentleman is in front of this lady. So I don't really gain anything in this particular situation if I open my second eye. Even perspective doesn't really become different. And we all know that with one eye you don't have
So the question is, what does VR add to music?
Exactly. At this moment, it's not really adding anything. It takes an idea of a paradigm that we have been using for the last century, and it just gives you a chance to look around. But why really would you like to look around if the band that you want to watch is straight ahead of you? I mean, it's not really that much. And I'm saying this coming from a company that we actually produce this kind of content, and now our big I would say worry is that we are not doing it in the right way, because we're just replicating what cinema and video has been doing. And we need to find ways to do it totally different. Maybe we need to restage the performances themselves. Maybe the performances that we go and watch live should not be the same that we would want to watch as an immersive experience when we are at home. So we may need to evolve the performance. The performance have changed the way they performed in the past. Look at Bowie.
I mean, for video, normally the experience is better at home. I mean, for example, football. If you go to a football match, it's better to see it on TV, for sure. If you miss the goal in live.
Formula One.
Yeah, it's the same. But for music, sometimes you could see it better on YouTube, but you want to live the experience. And, and if you're small and you try to, I mean, but at the end you want to be there, like just to be part of something that is unique and real, and only happen once in each part of it. And I think that's the most difficult to replicate, and that technology, that's a big challenge right now, because if it's about have a perfect way to see that, of course you stay at home, but I don't think like Nation is worried that people will stay at home and not going to see the shows.
Most of the money in the music industry, it's on live, so of course they're not worried. It's where the money is.
But do you think that was a second order effect? Sorry, just to interject slightly. Sure. Is it the fact that so much money went into live, was that simply a second order effect of all the money being taken out of the recorded side?
Yeah, people started spending it in experiences. A few years ago, we were what we owned, so if you bought a new car or a VCR or whatever you bought at the time, you were that, you would like to show people, I have a new car, a new computer. Now you are what you do. And the push comes also from social media, because you need to update it constantly, so you feel the need, so you cannot buy a car every day, but you can go to a different coffee shop, to vacation and so on more often, and then you share the experiences. So it became about experiences, and you need to go out to look for those experiences, and then you start going, spending the money, and the perception that the music is free when you listen, you take the money and you spend it on the experiences. I think that's what happened.
So speaking about VR, live streaming, is this a hype, or there's business behind it for the music industry?
For me, as I said in the morning, for me VR for music will only work in gaming as sync. There's money to be made there. VR as an experience in music, I agree with what has been said in the panel. It's not. At this point, it doesn't.
For the moment, it's not working. I mean, I can guarantee this because I come from this sector.
Yeah, you come.
I can very, very clearly give you examples of efforts that have been staged with tens of millions behind them. We had the launch of a platform in England in the spring that is supposed to be distributing 360-degree videos from concerts, and the subscription levels is very, very low, nowhere near what anybody would expect. And in general, I think VR or let's call it immersive experiences will not take off unless they find a way to present to the audience a totally different approach, a totally different paradigm that will make it useful and valuable for them to actually have. At this particular moment, the difference between watching a very well-produced video to watching I would say, mediocre VR performance is huge. I mean, we get hundreds of thousands of people watching the EMAs when we live stream them in 360-degree video. The statistics show that the people that use VR headsets as against the numbers of people that just watch them on their smartphones is huge. You get 1 to 100, using a VR headset, and most of the people just watch it interactively on their smartphone.
Yeah, like the penetration of the smart set, I don't know, of the VR, I don't know how big it is, to be honest.
It's not very big.
But it's small, like I can...
I mean, we know that even recently, Zuckerberg made a joke of the amount of sales that Oculus Go has registered. So he even jokes about
about it, like
his own company. So unless these guys get their act together and give us a chance to watch these experiences in a more user-friendly and less obtrusive way. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, we don't want to, I agree with you, we don't like to have big plastic things on our heads.
It's a basic instinct of survival. I mean, we're hardwired to survive. And when you have this on top of your face, you don't feel comfortable. That's why when we get into a room, we pick the corners, because our instinct is to protect our corners. If you're blocked, you don't feel comfortable. So the experience doesn't work. It's basic. I think it's basic. It's not
But to be pragmatic, all these technologies are here to stay. In the same way that I remember when I was younger that when digital music came out, in the same way with digital photography, everybody was saying, well, no, nobody's going to be producing digital music. It's really very bad, and the data rates are low, and there's a lot of aliasing, and this and that and the other. I mean, nobody's talking about this today. Everybody's doing everything digitally. So we're not going to talk about whether it's better or worse. It's simply adopted. And this is the power of technology that makes things easier, and we even may call it more democratic. Because let's face it, people can have a studio in their home now, but they couldn't have it when they needed a huge SSL deck to mix their own single. And it's the same with the immersive technologies. They are here to stay because there have been huge investments behind them. And these people are not going to let them die in the same way that the 3D television died. So it is up to us to make sure that we take advantage of them and make them give us experiences that are useful and we like to have them, instead of just having, garbage thrown at us.
I just tried like a few times, and once I was in Berlin in one startup competition, and it was a very simple device that I think could add a lot to the experience of the art. I don't know if you're using it, by the way, but basically it was like a wristband that it vibrates with the music. And you also can put something in your chest, because when you go to live music, you experience the whole body experience the music. And it's not only about how you see it, it's about, and it was like, oh, this feels more real. Like, and I don't know if that's the answer, because I can answer the question for that big problem, but I felt like very small details how to simulate the live experience could help to solve the problem. And going back to, because we're talking about different technologies, artificial intelligence about creating music, can that replace artists in the future? In the sense that one of you said that people now listen to the music and they don't know about who is the performer. Mm-hmm. I always ask this question in conference here, and I don't know, I'm not going to do it, but Danny Ocean is have a huge track here. How many people here know who is Danny Ocean?
Danny Ocean?
Yes.
The UK guys. The UK guys. And yeah, Danny Ocean. Danny Ocean, he had the most streamed track in Spain. Most streamed track in Spain in 2016 or 17. No, he competed with Despacito. And I'm going to put the track probably, and probably people will know it, but nobody knows that the artist. So how can he sell 100 tickets if nobody who is, I mean, I'm talking about billions of streams, not 100. Yeah. On Spotify you have 700 billions. Nobody knows who is. So is there a problem that a computer makes his song? Who's going to lose something here? Because, I mean, what's the big difference?
Well, doesn't it depend, like, again, to bring it back to the idea of genre, in hip hop, for example, the story behind the artist it's so much about, what beef is going on between who.
Even the lifestyle.
Or lifestyle, or all these other things. So that you can't really take away. It's the main problem that a lot of these, do you have X Factor in Spain?
Kind of,
right.
like.
What's like your guys' version of X Factor?
Probably they have X Factor.
Do they have X Factor?
X Factor? What's
Probably
it?
X Factor. You know what I mean, these kinds of talent shows. So people think they know what they want. They think they want to have a pop star that's a guy they can have a drink with and has a story behind him there. But really, when it actually comes to it, the hype, like a Supreme drop or whatever, they hype it up, and then the first single will be really big. But then you get these diminishing returns because there's actually no investment in the person's real investment in the person's narrative, or actually really to enjoy their music. So yeah, I think the idea that you can just create a hit out of thin air, I'm sure it would work in some cases, but a lot of people still want to feel like they're engaged in someone's narrative. And
which are, going back to what you said, the genres that are generating money on Spotify are the ones that probably people don't care who the artist is. Like,
Are people generating money in Spotify? That's the big
yes, of course, tons.
Well, but do we all remember the kind of money that artists used to make? I mean, let's face it.
But now the audience is
Beatles
bigger.
bought Rolls
No,
Royces out of their first record.
but that's why I think like through these technologies, that's why new bands can tour around the world that before was more
And
difficult.
that's how they
more,
make money,
yeah.
by touring around the
Yeah,
world.
that's big
So
money. Like,
if the song is made by AI and if the money is in live, how will they make the money? They won't
no, but
play.
there's money in
There's
streaming. Nobody said there's.
So
there's not.
they only get the cut from streaming. Is that what you're
Yeah, I
saying?
mean, and you don't have to invest in. I mean, it's done by a machine. Like I don't know how it works, but maybe you can create and you can. I don't know.
Let's face it, this answers a question that has been answered, I think, for decades or even centuries. There are always audiences that will live with cheap music made for consumption. I mean, even George Orwell wrote about music that would be produced for the masses by computers and they would all be the same. And we live this today and we lived it before. So it's not a new thing. Whether you have composers, you know, making up music that is to be consumed by the masses without really any understanding, just like that, or having a machine doing it, doesn't make any difference. But the machines, and I don't want to sound prophetic or anything, will never have tattoos and they will never have lifestyles and they will never, you know, create stories that people will connect to and feel they are similar to them or would look up to them as role models. That's a lot in music. I mean, role models in music have always made artists different.
I hope it's not. I prefer humans, but I just wanted to put the question out. Sure. We have 10 more minutes. I don't know if people in the audience wants to add something to the conversation. I'm pretty sure I have people.
Someone said something about VR, and I don't think someone put on their head.
Wait for 1 second.
Someone was talking about VR, I'm not too sure which one, and about
All of us.
people not wanting to put things on their head,
Sure.
specifically. Can you tell me why you think, I'm a big gamer myself and I've tried VR and I think it's absolutely fascinating. Why are big companies right now like Microsoft and Sony investing so much money into this type of technology if you don't think people are going to put stuff on their head? What are the reasons why?
Sure.
Do you not think
The
the
only
experience is good enough?
Well, you said a very key word, gamer.
That's what we were about to say.
That changed everything.
And you're in your room, in your comfort
it's the whole
zone, and you
experience.
control
It
it.
might not just be gaming. I mean,
No, it's not the same. Please, we
if I
are.
want to experience it
It's
at
not the
maybe a
same.
festival, maybe in VR.
If you have somebody, and I'm not going to say a lady because it's not ladies, that is putting a lot of emphasis on the way they prepare their hairstyle, for example, and you go in an exhibition and you ask them to put a headset on, a VR headset, to try something out, usually they don't because they will mess up their hair. And that's a very stupid thing to say, but it happens in reality. I think gaming is totally different because gamers are people that are willing to invest time and effort and put some difficulty in devices that the average person would not usually use, like even expensive computers. I think VR will take off when the devices are easier to use, more friendly, better quality than they are today, because the quality today is not really anywhere near a good, nice.
I think the quality is amazing. I've used a couple.
Sorry?
I think the quality is amazing, to be honest with you. I think VR is fascinating. I don't quite agree with your point about like the hair and stuff because I use VR stuff in my living room. So
Video, VR in video?
Sorry?
Video? You're talking about video in VR?
All sorts of stuff. Yeah. I mean,
No, it's not all sorts of
If I
stuff.
want to experience a festival or a concert through a VR device,
Have you done that, I suppose?
sorry?
You have experienced the festival or through a VR
No,
device.
but I'm talking about I would.
But we're producing this for more than 10 years now.
And people are
what
not
I'm
using it.
putting through is the experience we have as producers of this content.
How many festivals are on VR? How many festivals are bringing out VR content?
Not a lot.
So that's what I'm saying. So I don't,
But the reasoning for that is not because people don't want to put things on the face. Is what I'm saying.
yeah, but
It's because the content's not there.
First of all, the quality we get with VR from 360 video today is nowhere near the quality that people have been used to experiencing when they watch a good TV production. I mean, even if we film in 8K, the quality is close to 1/3 of the quality of an HD image. But that's not the point. The point is that, first of all, the devices that you need to experience VR en masse are not there. It's as simple as that. For example, the gamers is a much easier audience for this, because they know what they want and they're willing to invest in it. That's why PlayStation VR has sold a few millions now.
That was mainly because it was bundled.
Yes.
So the VR headset was bundled with the PS4, and so while they were celebrating this whole narrative of, oh, we've sold X amount of VR headsets, very few of them were outside of that bundle deal. And so when it actually came to the earnings calls and they revealed how many they'd sold individually, it was a really small percent of the actual overall base.
But going back to the festival thing, so the issue is actually the content, not people wanting to wear it, right?
Sorry?
The issue is actually the content, not people actually wanting to wear it.
It is a scarcity of content. I agree with that, because not a lot of people are willing to produce content in VR yet. On the other hand, it is really a kind of chicken and egg. I mean, as I said,
if this was on VR now, how many people would stay in their living room and put a headset on if it was normal to do and watch this conference? If you had it in your home? No one. I definitely would. If it meant not coming out in the rain. And that's how I know people that are doing meetings, internationally now through VR and...
But how much of an iteration or a leap forward is it though to have a VR headset when you can just do a conference call via? Do you need to see someone's face?
Because when you're actually in the experience, you feel like you're in the same room with someone. After a while, you switch off and you feel like it's not the same as having the problem I have doing business. I can do a Skype call with someone, but it's not the same as looking at someone in the eye. And even then, VR is not the same thing. And I'm not going to say that will ever replace that. But if I have to do a meeting in Asia and I don't want to go, to put a headset on it's going to happen anyway. It's already happening, and it's just going to escalate more and more.
So the example I mainly use with VR as a kind of an analogous example is the rise of the sunglasses industry. So early on, does anyone know much about Luxottica and the sunglasses industry? I was watching TV late one night on this. It talks about how before the 1950s, you will never see or hardly see any films with people wearing sunglasses because they were thought of as unattractive to wear sunglasses. 1950, you will barely see anything of anyone or famous photos. It's really with the kind of Audrey Hepburn 60s, 50s one that you start having people wear them. But the main thing was that they had to rebrand glasses, and they've done this with normal glasses as well now, as something attractive with the design. They had them, but they weren't considered like a desirable object. People didn't want to wear them because the glasses were very different. Like we've all seen those sort of NHS glasses back before glasses were sleek, like this gentleman's next to me right now. They had to really change the design, and they had to make it considered to be an attractive object, a desirable object, but they haven't done that yet with VR.
If I'm sitting in my living room and I'm going into a VR, I'm not going to care what it looks like. I'm just not, because the most important thing to me, like I said, is I'm going to an augmented reality world, so you won't be able to see that on my head anyway. I definitely think it sounds ridiculous now, thinking people are all going to sit around their living rooms with these headsets on, but then it's not that far-fetched, because in the future, it's going to happen.
Can I make a clarification, because I really want to avoid a misunderstanding? Myself, I am not saying that VR is not going to work and it doesn't work. My point is that we need to make better content for VR to work.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I said in the beginning.
And that's what we're saying. I think
because in games, for example, games have perfect content for VR because games were always interactive, and people were moving inside games and they were interacting with it. So it was an easy sell to go from a game that you control on your screen to a game that you are immersed into. So what I want to make clear is that I'm not saying that VR is not going to work or is not working. I said straight from the beginning that we have to rethink what kind of experience we will allow people to have, and it has to be different to simply putting a camera or 3 or 4 cameras as we do now in front of a stage and filming a concert. So probably we will need to involve the artists and the performers, and they should have to change the way they perform or the performance itself in general. And we see some artists doing some very interesting stuff that they even disintegrate themselves to make it more immersive. So we need to consider a different kind of experience that will work in VR. Now, whether the plastic things that we put on our head are good or bad, it's a temporary thing. It's not going to be like that for long. A year from now, you'll see totally different stuff, and we already see. So I mean, it's like the mobile phones. I remember when we did our first app for a smartphone, it was like magic. And 1 year before that, and we're talking about I think 2012 or something like this. In 2010, I don't think we had smartphones. And in 2000, we had phones that were huge and bulky and ugly. And look at this stuff now, and my phone is even 3 generations back. So we'll see the same thing in devices in VR. So talking about whether the Oculus Go is a good device or not is totally of no interest.
I think we both agree with each other now.
They
I don't want to take anyone else's time up for questions. That's what I'm saying.
Somebody else have a question?
I was wondering, you were talking about streaming, and I'm wondering what your opinion is on streaming and what the future of it will be.
The future of what?
Of streaming, like Spotify and stuff like that. Is it still will exist, or like will it exist in 5 years, or what's going to happen?
Streaming in 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not as much as certain factions would want us to go back to, CD.
There's no going back.
Streaming at least because when we make these projections, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in 20, 30 years. We can only really cast our mind forward within a certain period. But with streaming, I think where it will be most effective, I think like the question is more like how quickly is it going to get there, and how fast does it become the de facto mode of consumption. Two things. In certain markets, it's already been mostly saturated. Those are kind of the Scandinavian markets where they've already had it for many years. So I think there will actually be slower growth over the next few years, particularly as it comes up against more hesitant audiences that are going to stick with their format. But where streaming will most likely grow is I'm bullish on South America and also India.
One question to your question. Are you talking about on the perspective of the business, of the consumer?
Well, I'm interested in both, but I also was wondering about the perspective of artists.
Yeah.
Because like, it's not like a business where there's a lot of money for artists at the moment, and I was wondering how this.
Yeah, but unfortunately for the artists in that point, or in that area, streaming is going to be the medium for listening to music in the next few years. It's no doubt about it. And I think, some people are already seeing vinyl and CDs, mostly vinyl, as not a medium to listen to music, but as almost as merch, because you really like that band, really like that album, or that song, you buy the 7-inch, and then you buy it just to own it and to have it there like it's a t-shirt or something. And I have friends that buy vinyl and they don't even have a record player, but they buy the vinyl at the end of the show because they're so excited with the performance, and they buy the vinyl at the end of the show. So streaming will be the medium of choice to listen to music. I don't think there's any questions there.
All right, thank you.
Me? No, I think that from the perspective of the consumer, the change will not be perceived as a huge change, and it doesn't have to change. I mean, radio is like radio for the last 70 years, and it's great. And I think we're getting to the point that streaming for the consumer, it's offering what you're looking for, and how you're gonna perceive it is different, because in the sense, now algorithms are working very, very good. Playlists are being curated by algorithm, and they're mixing now the human curation with algorithm, but you're not supposed to know that. I mean, as a user, you don't care you don't care. Like, who cares if it's Ángel or Ditto or whoever put this on here? You just want to have good music. But in the business side, there's a lot of changes that's going to happen on the streaming business, or like, because in general, I think we're going to see fragmentation, and that's probably good, because at this point, for example, we have, as a company, my job is to pitch tracks to the editors, and for example, what happens is that if Spotify doesn't like that track in particular, in Spain you're a screw. Like, you doesn't have much options. Like, Spotify control like more than 90% of the market, and that's happening in Latin America as well. But some other markets where there's competition is good for artists, because if Spotify, I love Spotify, I love Apple Music, I don't have anything, but if Spotify doesn't love your track, you have other options. I can go to Apple Music and I can generate money there. At this point, the penetration of the other platforms in Hispanic territories is not that big, but YouTube is huge. But of course, the money that is coming from YouTube, the royalties are not the best ones. So going back, I think that fragmentation is going to be something that is needed. And we have the big companies here. We have Amazon, we have Apple, we have Google putting a lot of money there, and Spotify trying to catch up. And I think that we're going to see a lot of changes on how the business is being done. And now you see that Spotify is offering direct deals. Spotify is trying to lower down the costs. And that's why AI makes sense for them, because they can create money. They can create songs that they don't have to pay royalties for that. It's being done by a machine. So, but in the consumer, I don't think there's not much change here.
One thing that we could see, and this is a real like short-term trend, so let's say over the next 18 months, I think Spotify will start to look a lot more like YouTube, for the reason that are people aware that Spotify signed a deal with DistroKid, where you could do direct distribution? Now, think about what Spotify's motivations are. They actually want to be able to lower their costs, and ergo would be interested, much in the same way that YouTube pushed creators so they didn't have to, rely on the traditional media framework. Because if you've just got all this consumption on YouTubers, you don't have to pay out to Viacom or Comcast or all these other entities. So what we could see, or one possible outcome with, or a second order effect of artists being able to upload directly, is that through the playlist channels, we'll see more artists favored that are uploading directly, because Spotify will know that they're not attached to that.
But in that sense, like it's tricky. Like at this point, there are 1.3 million artists that have music on Spotify. It's 40 million the catalog. And if you sell the story that if you go direct, you have a better result, that's a lie on the long term, because they can create a 1.3 million playlist to develop enough playlists for all those new artists that are going to sign directly. And another problem with that is that at this point, if I don't have a good result with a track, the label or the artist can call me, or whoever in the company, hey, go back, call them, push. And I've done that in the past, and we have pushed for a track maybe more than a year and then become a hit. But if you're on a direct deal, that's it. You don't have somebody to represent you. Like that's the last door you can knock. And if the door said no, it's more difficult. You don't have somebody to push for you. And that's why I think it's tricky when the way that artists are seeing that if I sign a direct deal, that will be beneficial for me, because I'm going to go, of course that's going to happen with the first one they sign, the big ones. Yeah. But what about the long tail? That's not going to happen. They don't have, like the bandwidth is not enough for all the artists to be supported. And that's important, because if you have a direct deal, you have to take care about other platforms, about the fragmentation that I mentioned before. Like if you put all your eggs in Spotify, and they don't love you, you have a problem.
The DistroKid deal means they will be across platform.
Yeah. His whole job is looking after. Look, we have offices in 20 countries, and our reps sit with Spotify every week. Tell them our priorities. We sit with that. So Ángel's whole job for Ditto, just to repeat myself, is sitting with our teams who, if you have a big international, when we did Chance the Rapper stuff, for example, no one knew who he was in Paris. So we have a rep who knows a Spotify person in Paris who can go into them and present the material, and that's Chance the Rapper. So what Spotify would like to say is, upload through DistroKid, your music's going to get heard by playlist, and maybe it will if their algorithm picks it up, but maybe your music's amazing and you're not getting many streams and no one is there to back your case. So someone like Ángel's full-time job is building relationships, and whatever, like I was saying earlier, whatever algorithm you create for any business, you're not going to take away the relationship aspect of it. So having direct contact with those Spotify reps in each country is still the most important thing for an artist. So I'd say, they've got to think very seriously if they're going to sign a direct deal with one platform, if that's the best idea, as going for someone like us, who have created people from the ground up, and we'll support them over a few years.
Totally, and the thing with DistroKid deal, that's only for what's called subscription, but that doesn't offer in the label services that I'm talking about, like going back.
So management of your copyright.
That's a big difference, and that's how you become a superstar. It's only chance he's the lucky one. He could be on the subscription model and still. I mean, but that's not
even,
the
even with him, like I said, we pitched him into territories where they,
globally,
didn't know who Chance the Rapper was, and Spotify aren't going to pick that up. And there were playlists we got him on that he wouldn't have been on. So for every artist at that point in the career, even if not a company like us, you still need that relationship and you still need a team behind you. You're never going to create a two-sided marketplace without people in the middle that are working. Because I hate when people call us middlemen, because we're the people who literally sit there working every day to try and push new artists.
No, I do agree. Even if you are quote unquote independent, you need a team behind you. Like the whole thing of Stormzy,
as you were saying, what happens when
being independent.
you get on a huge playlist, no one knows who you are. You get on a massive playlist, you don't know how to move from that and this and that. And there's so many people that I've seen people who are getting 5 million streams a month who have 100 followers because they're on a dinner playlist and no one knows who they are and they don't know how to get to that next level. So for a new artist, the most important thing is picking dittomusic.com.
Did we answer your question? Yeah, cool. Do we have time for one more?
We can definitely talk after.
No? One more? There's one more? Yeah, we have one more.
One more.
Thank you.
Yes. About concerts and virtual concerts, don't you think that the problem is that virtual concerts don't have social relationships in the public? I go for a concert because I want to listen to music, but this is because I want to meet friends. I think that is important, right?
Of course. Big question. I said before what my daughter says, that it's very lonely in VR. And I think that the social aspect in music is very, very important. And that brings us back to my pet subject, which is what kind of experience do we want to create so that people, when they're talking about virtual experiences, we're not just recreating what's happening today in a more blunt way, without our friends and without beer and without pizzas and without talking with each other. So you're right, the social aspect has to be there, so we have to consider how we're going to bring it in if we want to have virtual performances. Not just virtual concerts, virtual experiences in general that come from live performances. But it definitely cannot be just one person watching a concert on their own in the same way that we have been doing all this time.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, all of you.
Now, can I just...
Yeah.